Hello, and welcome to How to Enhance Your Voice and Your Sense of Self. This is a special invitation for those of you who want to come home to yourself so you can level up how you show up. I'm going to be sharing with you lots of tools and tips and practices to get you there. My name is Melissa Hurt. I've got my PhD in embodied acting theory, which means that I know deeply how people learn skills so they become ingrained into their being and thus show up in their best light. I specialize in embodied voice, speech, and movement. I believe that how we speak is a critical part of how we show up in the world. My goal is for people to feel empowered, engaged, and excited to share their message. Now, you might think that I'm an extrovert or that I'm a person who's always loved hearing myself talk because I work with embodied voice work. Nope, it's actually quite the opposite. How did I get here anyway? Well, there I am at about 6 years old or so. I'm pretty cute, aren't I? I was a quiet kid, and as I was growing up, I had a little bit of a storm inside of me. I just never really knew where I fit in and didn't really feel like I belonged anywhere. I wasn't a selective mute or anything like that. I was just shy around groups of kids. And I moved around a lot in my elementary years. I went to 5 elementary schools, and that sure didn't help my shyness. So just as I started making friends, we'd have to move somewhere else, and I'd have to start over on building friendships with other kids. Well, year after year, move after move, I just got more and more interior. I became kind of like a wallpaper girl, meaning I was very good at staying on the outskirts and observing everything. It's not a fun place to be. And I'll never forget getting called after class in the 5th grade to speak to the teacher, and I was terrified. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? Well, she told me I had to speak up more. And I'll never forget saying to her in my super quiet voice, but I thought I wasn't supposed to talk in class. And she was stumped. And she said, well, it's different when the teacher is asking you a question. You need to speak up so that I can hear your answer. Well, whether I was being asked a question or not, I did not want to be seen or heard by anyone. I felt like a lost child in a sea of kids who had figured it all out. Now, don't get me wrong. I was always nice to kids. I've always been a nice person. It's just who I am. But I was never the kid with 100 friends. I kept my real friends super duper close. And I felt I could only really be goofy or silly with them when I was behind closed doors. Fast forward, here I am, freshman year of high school, just starting to grab life by the reins. Well, kind of. What happened my freshman year was I joined drama class as my elective. Now, on the inside, I wanted to be more vivacious. I wanted to be like the actors I saw when I was 12 years old, and I went to see a production of A Chorus Line. I was absolutely mesmerized, not just by the play, because I love the play, but these actors who were able to be on stage and be seen and take center stage and sing a solo and dance. And I thought, how do people do that? I just wanted people to be able to look at me and not feel like they were judging me. So I thought, drama class, I'm doing it. Well, unfortunately, my drama teacher treated the class like it was study hall. We did not learn a whole lot about acting or theater in that class. And I really still felt like there was something inside me that needed to come out. Remember, I felt like I had a storm inside of me, and I didn't really know what to do with it. So my junior year, I auditioned for and got accepted into a magnet school for theater at a school on the other side of town. Now, this was a huge opportunity for me because not only did it mean, yes, I have to declare that I am going to study theater, which means I'm changing my schedule. So I'm only taking those core classes from my junior year and my senior year at my home base high school, but then I'm getting on a bus going on the other side of town to then spend 2 class periods at this other school, deeply learning acting, directing, set design, lighting design, Tai Chi, dance. I mean, we did so much. The teachers there really treated it like it was a New York City conservatory. But then I get on a bus for 7th period and come back to my home base so that I could take my bus home. It was awesome. And I studied theater seriously, and I began identifying parts of myself that needed expression. It needed to come out, and it really was so therapeutic. So when I graduated from high school and went to college, no shocker in what I ended up majoring in, it was theater. But I didn't land my first role in the school production until my junior year because I was still very self-conscious and holding myself back. I took auditions so seriously, probably too seriously, and because of all that tension, I was a mess and I was never able to really perform the way that the play needed me to perform. But my junior year, something about my junior year I'm realizing, my junior year, I was auditioning for the play and I thought, well, you know what? I'm not going to get it anyway, so I might as well just have fun. And guess what? That sense of play not only got me cast, but it got me cast as the comedic relief in the play, which was so much fun. Well, I graduated cum laude and was set on being a professional actress and a director in the Washington, D.C. market. I auditioned quite a bit. Now, my job right out of the gate was I was a makeup artist. That was a thing that I was doing to pay my rent. But I was still auditioning quite a bit, and I did get cast in one professional show. Because of the rehearsal schedule of the show, it meant I had to quit my job so that I could do this play, which was a massive sacrifice, but honestly, it's what a lot of actors have to do. So to make ends meet, I worked as a freelance makeup artist, a temp, I was a waitress, doing all these little jobs to pay the bills. And I was doing more of this temp work, hustle work than theater. And I began to feel lost again. I just didn't know what was happening. So I thought, well, I should go back to school. I tend to stay really focused when I'm working in that kind of environment. So I went on to get my MFA in theater pedagogy. And in my MFA, I was a super achiever. It was a 3-year program that I did in 2.5 years. I got a 4.0 GPA. I was super proud of that because I minored in history. And the course load in the history department was very different from what I was used to in the theater department. On the theater department, don't think it's an easy class. You're still reading hundreds of pages a week and writing papers. But I'm also in the studio and in production until maybe 11 o'clock midnight every night working on shows. So I was really proud of that 4.0. Wrote my thesis project in 4.5 days because I took amazing notes during my thesis production and I just got her done. Here I am in this picture. I was chosen to speak at the graduation ceremony. I was really honored to be able to do that. But even though I was super smart, very successful, I still felt lost on my down-home sense of purpose. And you might think, how is that possible? You're checking all the boxes. Well, I didn't know either, but I just felt like I was kind of still lost inside. Well, after my MFA, I was hired to be the head of speech and drama at a community college in Kansas. And here I am at my desk. I was really proud to be in that position. I loved teaching. I wrote the curriculum for the drama program. I was mentoring about 10 to 12 public speaking teachers at different satellite locations. I was producing. It was great. But here was the challenge that I came up against. I realized that I was a taskmaster as a professor. I was really hard. Really hard and really tough on the kids, especially with attendance and turning in papers late, things like that. And I really didn't know any other way to be because I was copying the style of all the teachers that I had had. And this way of being did not feel true to me, but I honestly did not know what my own way was. I didn't know who I truly was deep down inside. So all I could do was copy the leaders before me as I stepped into a leadership position. And again, I just felt kind of lost. So at this point, I need to pump the brakes, reality check. Can you relate to any of these elements of my story so far? Because I'm sharing pretty personal things only because I suspect these things I've been experiencing are somewhat universal. Can you relate to checking all the boxes life dictates only to feel lost on your purpose? Can you relate to feeling like you haven't quite hit the mark on who or how you want to show up? Can you relate to feeling like you are performing in the way others have expected you to perform, but it's not quite you? Well, if you can, this is a part of my timeline where my story starts to take a turn. I went from Kansas to get my PhD. Something about academia always gave me the structure and the environment to grow, not just professionally, but personally in different ways. And I knew that I wanted to teach theater history and dramatic literature and really teach the students that were beyond the community college level, because I wanted to teach the upper level classes and even teach graduate students. So I knew that getting a PhD was the only way I could get there. And this is Oregon. Let's take a moment to breathe in the beauty of Oregon in this picture, the Willamette Valley. So I'm in Oregon getting my PhD, thinking, okay, here's a reprieve. It was actually quite the opposite, if I'm going to be honest with you. The professors and the doctoral program were tough. I mean, really, really tough. And I thought I had had taskmasters before, but these people were super tough. And not always in ways that were constructive. In some ways, they were just tearing me down. And it was really, really, really hard on me, energetically, spiritually, in all ways. I was seeing a therapist, and she suggested I try yoga. Get me out of the program, do some mind-body healing. And I had never done yoga. Of course, I'd heard about it, but I really didn't know a thing about it. So at the age of 30 years old, I went to yoga class. And I'll never forget, I was wearing biker shorts and a sports bra. I seriously thought I was going to bust a sweat in yoga class. And I laugh at it now because it's just so not what yoga is. And I remember very clearly the energy in the room was very quiet and still and bright. Just the energy was bright, and that was new for me. The teacher crossed the room and came right to me, and I'm looking around me like, who is she going to? She was looking at me. And she shook hands with me and introduced herself and welcomed me to the class, which it really touched me that she did that. And I'll also never forget that it took me about a month of going to yoga once or twice a week before I was even comfortable closing my eyes for Shavasana, the final pose. I was so tightly wound with anxiety and that storm in me that I didn't know how to relax. And I didn't realize that until I started doing yoga. But I committed to the practice because the people in the space were so beautiful. And I thought, I don't know what Kool-Aid they're drinking, but I need it. And I committed to the practice. And after some time, I realized at 30 years old how it felt to not have anxiety. It was the first time in my life that I literally saw and noticed the color of the sky, the colors of the leaves and the trees around me. I felt present. And once I felt that, I knew that I couldn't go back. I had to keep doing these embodied mindfulness practices because they were going to save my life. Now, coincidentally, that summer after my first year of my doctoral studies, I wanted to go deeper into learning voice work and movement work because voice and movement make up the whole of acting practice for basically the whole of time up until maybe the beginning of the 20th century. So I wanted to learn more about it. And so I attended a 4-week summer intensive in the LESAC voice, speech, and movement work. And in this picture here, I'm blindfolded and I'm on the floor. And what I'm doing is I'm exploring text, like parts of a script that I had memorized, and I'm being coached into different elements of the LESAC work to experience through that text, and in turn experience different variables within myself on who I am and how I show up and how I can express myself. And it was a really beautiful, deep experiment. It was awesome. And it was through that 4-week summer intensive that I finally came home to myself. Literally, guys, it was the first time. Here I am now at 31 years old. I've been doing yoga for not quite a year, but now I've done 4 weeks of embodied voice, speech, and movement work. And all the nonsense that had been shackled onto me by my culture, I had been able to shake it off and see the deepest parts of myself and embrace those parts of myself and come home to me. It was really, truly beautiful. And through this work, I got radically honest with myself, always doing that with loving kindness. And thankfully, I had yoga practice and a teacher who taught the philosophies of yoga in the practice for me to understand what loving kindness meant. I unearthed my habitual ways of showing up, which were very tense and shy or angry. I understood how those ways of being were trying to keep me safe, but really they were holding me back. And the LESAC work gave me the tools and skills to find myself. They gave me the skills to be myself and take up space in a way that felt completely authentic to me. Not pushy, not brazen, not copying a style of someone else that I admired. And through doing and being in a way that I had to be every day. So basically just by living, by speaking and living through this work, I discovered my energetic blocks, my emotional and physical tensions, and I peeled back stagnant layers of myself to reveal my inner light. And what's more is that I could tap into this beautiful sense of self every single time I would speak or move, which is all the time. I realized that I can be empowered, vulnerable, and in every way of being in between. I can have variety, and this helped me to find and enhance my true self. I returned to learn more of the work the next summer. And then that following summer, I completed the teacher training. And I was a teaching intern for that next summer. So yes, 4 summers I was committed to this work. I completed 800 hours of training to become a certified trainer. Now, it wasn't just lickety-split. I did the hours. I got my certification. I had to be mentored, that my mentor had to watch me teach and give me feedback. I had to do a written exam. It was a pretty extensive process, but I loved it. And I dedicated my dissertation research to the LESAC work because it was so profound. And that's when I started to dive into embodied actor training as my field of study. So I didn't just study the LESAC work, but I studied the works of other embodied practices to get to the heart of what does it mean to learn skills through your whole self. So you're not just memorizing something and applying it, but you're living it and doing it, and it's ingrained through muscle memory. So I wrote my dissertation on the work. It later became a book published by Routledge, and it's called Arthur Lesac's Embodied Actor Training. And there it is. It's available wherever books are sold online. Grab yourself a copy. Once I had completed my PhD, I had my certification, I wanted to start sharing this work with others and helping them. And I started coaching clients, and I was coaching a lot of corporate clients in the Washington, D.C. metro area. I was coaching men and women. I was coaching people of various nationalities. Some of them were native English speakers. Some of them, English was not their first language. I was speaking people who were not corporate, but were professional hairdressers. I mean, I worked with all kinds of people. And I realized a common thread, that how we speak is directly connected to how we show up energetically. Meaning the patterns of our speech, how our voices feel and sound, our speech rhythms. Everything is connected to how we show up in the spiritual sense. I realized that how we speak is tied to realizing and honoring our core values. So if you're going to be wishy-washy on boundaries and on your values, you might notice vocal strain or your breathing is off at various points in the day. And I would just invite you to wonder, are you going against your own values in that moment? Because the voice is an energy and it's also a physical body part. So when you are developing the voice physically, you develop your sense of self. That's exactly what happened to me, and it's what I observed in many clients over years of coaching in the Washington, D.C. area. So the problems that my clients shared, the things that brought them into my studio, were that they were feeling like their ideas were not taken seriously at work because they can't compete with the bombastic voices at the table. So these are boardroom meetings where people are shouting, trying to get the winning solution, and they just couldn't compete. And because their voices were not as strong as the others, they were not taken seriously at work. My clients had vocal strain by the end of the day, and many times lost their voices by the end of the day, or certainly by the end of work functions at cocktail hours. They could not speak, and they were no longer able to share their elevator pitches because they had lost their voices. My clients all shared a lack of articulation, meaning people kept asking them to repeat themselves because they either had motor mouth or mush mouth. And a lot of my clients felt uninspired at work and stuck energetically. They just didn't really know what lane they should be in anymore. And that trickled down into how they gave presentations and how they did water cooler talk even. I mean, anything that had to do with their expression was impacted by feeling uninspired and stuck. Well, here's the solution to all of that. Taking the time to feel your breath, voice, speech, and movement to reveal patterns holding you back, which you've put in place to keep yourself safe once upon a time. But you are not that person from all those years ago. You're in a new dynamic, but your voice is still stuck in an old pattern. So you have to take your time to feel and notice these things. And once you do, you take on skill sets to step into your authentic, empowered voice that aligns with your greater vision for who you know you are meant to be. So here's what doesn't work. And I wonder if some of you have done some of these things or you've been told to do these things. Throwing your voice against the back wall. So if you're in an auditorium and they want you to, quote, project, they say, throw your voice against the back wall like you're throwing a baseball. Well, all that does is it puts force into your delivery. It puts tension in your breath and in your throat. And you have no vocal variety, no highs and lows in your pitch because you're shouting. That doesn't work. And you will lose your voice and you will not feel authentic or able to connect with your audience when you're doing that. Tongue twisters. Now they are fun. Don't get me wrong. And they are effective to a point. However, unless you're going around always saying, Sally sells seashells by the seashore, and that's the only thing you're saying, then your articulation is not going to be as clear and crisp as for the words that you use for your own life and for your own profession. So many times I would take and build words and make word lists out of the vocabulary and the lexicon that my clients actually need for their work. So if they're lawyers, I'm finding legal phrases. If they are in architecture, I'm finding those phrases. So whatever you actually need to communicate, find ways to play with the speech clarity of those phrases to enhance the way you feel consonants and become clearer in your everyday speech. Toastmasters. Now, don't get me wrong. I really do love Toastmasters as an organization. I think they're great. But here's what I see happening. I have worked with people who do Toastmasters, but they don't know how to internalize the feedback to make organic changes to their delivery. So just because you gave a presentation in Toastmasters and your feedback was, well, you had 10 ers and ums and your voice was falling off at the ends of your sentences, well, that's good feedback, but how do you self-correct? If you don't have that inner compass and that feeling sense of how you're communicating, then you're not going to be able to make the necessary changes to improve that speech. And then lastly, singing lessons to strengthen your speaking voice. Now, singing lessons are awesome. They're great, do them, but they're developing a different register of your voice. Your speaking voice is in a different range, and if you want to find vocal power and be able to have a voice that's resonant and full and warm and carrying through the room, you need to develop your speaking voice, not your singing voice. And there are very specific skills and tools that get you there. So here is what works. Building your self-awareness of how you speak. Developing your voice and speech organically. So you've got to develop your voice and your speech and not develop it against some imagined standard. And yes, I'm going to insert here, your regional or cultural dialect is beautiful and it is part of you. So develop your voice and speech within your regional or cultural dialect. You don't have to neutralize your voice. We're no longer there, thankfully, unless you want to, because you can do that too. But when you're developing your voice and speech organically, you're starting from where you are and who you are, as you should. And what works is understanding your patterns and discovering how to override them for better dynamics in your expression, because you don't want to be one note. Knowing your patterns means that you have variety and you can show up in a myriad of ways. So whether you're stepping into a leadership position or whether you're working one-on-one with someone, whether you're working with children, whether you're doing something that's indoors versus outdoors, all kinds of situations require different vocal life. And when you understand your patterns and know how to work through them, you have the green light for any way of dynamically expressing yourself to fit the circumstance you find yourself in. So let's try a few practices together. Okay, I want you to take a deep breath. Just take a deep breath, exhale it out, and notice how it feels. Now we're going to do it again, but a different way. Now I want you to imagine smelling something you love. Anything, whatever comes to mind is right. And then sigh it out with pleasure. I'm willing to bet that when you took the breath the second time around, your breathing was slower, it was fuller, you had more expansion in your core and your trunk, and it probably felt really good. This is because we had behavior attached to it. It was embodied. It was you. So in this way, if you were to continue smelling something you love with pleasure and sighing it out with pleasure, you will be developing optimal breathing for yourself and enriching your breathing practice that will inform every aspect of your life. If you were to continue breathing in this way, even if it's just for 5 focused minutes a day, it will trickle over into your everyday natural breathing, and it will more than likely lower your blood pressure, give you better sleep, all kinds of physiological benefits because you're changing your biochemistry with an optimal breath. So we have 2 different dynamics happening here. Interoception, which is your internal sense of yourself. So when you are breathing something you love, you can feel the air moving inside of you. You can feel your inner spaces. You can feel the movement of your belly, your chest, your back. You can feel it from the inside out. But you can also feel what we call proprioception, which is your sense of your moving self. So it's feeling yourself through balance and rhythm, feeling yourself in space. So heightening your awareness of yourself through these senses increases neural activity. So it's increasing the activity of the neurons in your brain so that you are overriding old patterns of how you breathe. We're just going to stick with the breath so that you can come into healthier habits for breathing, and it will become your way of life. Heightening your awareness of yourself through these senses enhances your connection with balance and rhythm in your expression, and it improves your wellness overall. This is, quite frankly, mindfulness at work right now. Let's try another one. Hum on an M to warm up your voice. Just notice what you notice. Hum on an M. All right, now I've got 3 different instructions for you. One is feel a slight yawn in the back of your mouth space, as if you're in an office meeting and you need to yawn, but you don't want to be rude. That little incipient yawn, that lift in the back of the mouth space. Bring your lips slightly forward, as if you're about to say shh, but you don't, or about to kiss a little puppy. But you're bringing your lips forward slightly just to hide the yawn. And now within this space, hum on an M. Now this slight yawn space and the bringing lips forward, these are very slight movements. So the outer eye will barely notice it's happening, but you can feel it from inside because of that interoception and proprioception. And as you hum on an M, give it a few pitches. And I bet you notice more vibration in your mouth. I bet you feel a fuller resonance of your voice, meaning it's just fuller sounding. This is because we have created what Arthur Lessack calls the reverse megaphone. So if you think of the cheerleader megaphone that has the small little lip opening and then the big opening that goes towards the audience, reverse it. So now the big side is at the back of the mouth space. The cheeks and the hard palate, the tongue, make the sides of the megaphone. And then the lips that are softly forward make the mouthpiece. The reverse megaphone releases physical tension and the soft tissue of the throat and the oral cavity. It gives space for vocal vibrations to resonate against the bones of the skull. So you feel more of your voice and others will hear you better because it's resonating. The skull and the teeth are like a natural amplification system. So if you can feel your voice in these bony surfaces, other people can hear you. All right, let's do one more experiment. Staying with the M, now we're going to put it into the word home. Hum on the M as you say the word home. Home. And take your time to feel the vibrations of the M. Feel the openness of the reverse megaphone. Home. Home. And you're maybe even feeling the word as if it's the first time you've ever said the word. You're tasting it, getting to know it. Now feel the statement, home, where I'm from. So we have 3 M's there in that statement. Hum on each of the M's and then feel them a little bit more quickly. Because when you speak to other people, more than likely you aren't humming for as long as you are now. Because right now we're just getting to know it. And as you become aware of the M's and you feel those vibrations, they are now part of you. And you can now feel the balance and rhythm of the sentence of that statement because of the M. Well, imagine what happens when you do that with all of the speech sounds of your language. You become so clear in what you're saying and how you're saying it. And more than that, your message with the capital M, your message gets clearer because you're very intentional with language. It's helped me tremendously come to know who I am at my core. My values have become crystal clear, and I've become a better writer because of it. I have such love for language because of this work that I can feel the balance and rhythm and the musicality of language that has made me a better communicator in every way. So why is moving slowly important? Why were we humming on the M? to taste it and then put it into the word and still humming it? Well, moving slowly is important because it lets us notice if our habitual way of speaking involves strain. We have to just lift the hood and see what's happening under there. And once we identify strain, whether it's physical and or emotional, we can determine where it is, why it is, how it is. We just start to understand the patterns. And once we understand the patterns, again, with loving kindness, we know how to do better because we're always seeking what feels good and optimal for our wellness through this work. Moving slowly is important also because it lowers our blood pressure and we're breathing more optimally. It reduces anxiety. And so again, this becomes a psychophysical practice. It's your breath, it's your spirit, it's your mind, it's your body. Everything is developing as you move through this work. So with all of this, I introduce for you a course that I have created that is very dear for me. It's called Embodied Voice. It's a self-paced course teaching you how to become aware of the inner sensations that make you up through slow movements to feel the balance and rhythm of speech. So this can be yours with embodied voice practice. Increased confidence, authentic dynamics and expression, so communicating in a range of situations dynamically without sounding or feeling fake. Better breathing overall, better sleep, enhanced wellness, a renewed sense of personal agency, and feeling like you're meditating as you speak, feeling calm and grounded with enhanced self-awareness. These are the benefits that my clients have experienced. And again, my clients have ranged from teenagers to elders, men and women, corporate professionals and stay-at-home moms. What they all have in common before going through this work is feeling like they weren't heard, not being able to express themselves in ways that honor their values, and they craved more agency in their lives. And not only have they now become better and clearer communicators, which has grown their careers, deepened their relationships, but they've also experienced all these benefits as well. So overall wellness is enhanced greatly. Seal, the working professional in the Washington, D.C. area, shares, "The lessons were interactive, with pauses giving me a chance to experiment with sounds and tonalities along the way. The overall length of each lesson was just right for me. The style of this course encouraged me to be creative in exploring various sounds. I'm so glad I invested the time to really explore the power of my voice." These practices take no more than 10 to 15 minutes to complete, and many of them are even much shorter than that. I know you are busy people, so I don't create programming that eats into your day and feels like work. Instead, I create programming that's an escape into yourself, to play, to be curious, and discover what's been dormant all these years. So no more forcing yourself vocally to be heard in a crowded room. No more losing your voice at work functions. No more feeling like you don't know who or how you are when you express yourself. No more speaking so fast people can't understand you and then they end up losing your message. No more hiding energetically when you speak. And if you are a person in which English is not your first language, take a note from Phuong in Vietnam. He shared, "I can better understand my speech, consonants, and breath connections when I speak English. I am fond of taking the time to feel and play with the language." He really fell in love with English through this work, and it didn't feel laborious for him at all. So what do you get with this course? This is a self-paced course that is delivered into your email inbox. You get 13 video modules covering the whole of Arthur Lessack's embodied voice practice. I went through many summer intensives to learn this work, and my clients, when they wanted to learn the whole of the voice and speech work, they had to commit to a lot of sessions with me, which for some of them got a little expensive. So I created this course so that you can have the whole of Arthur Lessack's embodied voice and speech work at a fraction of the cost. And I've made the video lessons very succinct because they range from 4 to 15 minutes in length each, because again, I know you're busy. With each of the video modules comes a video journal prompt with soothing music to accompany your reflective process. Now that process of reflection is very important. It's how we identify patterns. It's how we come into new ways of being, which is a deeper purpose of doing this work. And you get a 30-page PDF workbook with those journal prompts in them. Plus, because I truly believe that when you're doing embodied voice work, you're doing just as much personal spiritual development as vocal development. You have 6 mindset moment videos to take you on a deeper dive into how you're showing up. There's a separate mindset moments PDF journal, a 40-day suggested course calendar, and you have lifetime access to all of the above. Everything is downloadable. So download it, put it in your own cloud, and you've got it for life. Because here's what I know. Life goes through seasons. You might step into different roles throughout your life, and you might feel like your voice is changing because you are changing. You will have this work for your life to go back through and revisit, to continue enhancing and growing your voice. That's your physical voice and your energetic voice as you move through the opportunities that life gives you. And let's not forget, with this work, you have an expressive toolkit that gives you the freedom to be yourself and show up fully for your best life. Safa, a teacher, says, "It really felt like I was in yoga practice for the voice. I feel more mindful during the day with breath and dynamic alignment. I feel more stamina in my voice, even after a long day of reading to kids. It was exhilarating." Imagine a teacher feeling stamina and exhilarated at the end of the day. Marnie, a voice artist, shares, "I feel like this work is going to totally change my life. I'm so excited for this." Now, she sent me that text. She was starting the program, and since then, she has become a highly celebrated, award-winning audiobook narrator. So good for you, Marnie. So once again, here's what you get. 13 videos teaching you Arthur Lessack's embodied voice practice. Again, the video lessons range from 4 to 15 minutes each. 13 video journal prompts with this nice music to accompany your reflective process, a 30-page PDF workbook with those journal prompts in them, plus you get the 6 mindset moment videos, a separate mindset moments PDF journal, a 40-day suggested course calendar, lifetime access to all of it. You get all of this for $237, which is a fraction of what you would be paying for one-on-one work to learn the whole of this process. Because I want you to feel like this work is accessible for you. $237 investment for the work that will enhance and grow for your life. And let's not forget, I'm here for you. You can contact me if any questions arise as you're going through the work. My email address is melissa@melissahurt.com. Reach out to me and I will be happy to answer any questions that might come up. And I want to thank you for your time and for your attention today. Again, this work legitimately saved my life, certainly saved the quality of my life, because I really did have a storm inside of me for decades. And it helped me to get unstuck so that I could feel free and authentic through the many seasons that my life has gone through since learning the work. And I know it can do the same for you. If you have any questions, again, email me, melissa@melissahurt.com, and you can read more about me and my work at my website, melissahurt.com. Thank you so much.